Hey girl, hey, this is your girl, Queen ShanShan, and this is a broadcast podcast. Thank you so much. We are in episode 8, you guys, and I just want to say thank you for being here on the ride with us. We had an amazing episode 7. Nicole Dunn was my last guest co-host, and I can't believe it. In one day, literally, which was 2 or 3 days ago when we uploaded the episode, we had over 100 downloads in 24 hours. Like, really? Come on, universe. Thank you so much. I appreciate you so much. Thank you guys for your subscriptions, your subscribing, your following, you're telling people about me, you're telling people about the podcast, the movement. We are sharing businesses, we're sharing ideas. So I just can't say enough of being grateful. Thank you so much. And I want to definitely start off this podcast by saying happy birthday to my little Mason cakes. Mason Lit, you turn 9 years old in a few days. I love you very much. For those who don't know who Mason is my best friend's son, Heather's son, and he turns 9. And he called me yesterday and he said, will you please mention that it's my birthday? And of course, I do anything for my Mason cakes. So happy birthday, Mason. We love you. And I'll see you very, very soon.
It's your birthday. Yes, it is. It's your birthday. Yes, it is. It's your birthday. So happy birthday to you. Yes, you. It's your birthday. Yes, it is. It's your birthday. Yes, it is. It's your birthday. So happy birthday to you. Yes, to you.
Let's get into it. We have lots of topics for tonight. We have a great new guest co-host. I am sitting next to Danny. And Danny, he is a high school teacher, a private high school teacher. And it's very apropos that we're talking to you today. So hi, Danny.
Hi, Queen ShanShan.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. So honored. We're also going to talk about what the topic of discussion is, the Covington High School dilemma, drama that you guys have been hearing over for the last, 72 hours about the students who mocked the Native American man in Washington D.C. wearing MAGA hats. We're also going to talk about Naomi Campbell's huge comeback. If you guys don't know who Naomi Campbell is, she is the mother of all mothers of supermodels back in the 80s and 90s. She just came back with On the Runway yesterday and made it just, I was in awe when I saw her, what she was wearing. And then we're going to talk about Madonna Minute and her new look and other topics. So let's get into it. What's for dinner? We always order someone or something from either Postmates or DoorDash or some sort of food delivery service for our podcast dinner. And tonight we had the delicious food delivered by Postmates. #Postmates. I hope you're listening. Cuban Versailles. And it was one of my favorite restaurants. And it's funny because I had a podcast talking about a few podcasts ago about Cuba. And I was like, actually tasting and wanting Cuban food. And Danny, how was dinner tonight?
It was delicious. Delicioso.
Okay. What did you order?
I ordered breaded chicken steak. And it came with rice and beans, black beans, Caribbean style beans, and with plantains. And I also had beef empanadas. And I was full with 5 bites.
Yeah,
There's a lot of food.
It's a lot of food.
And I have a great lunch for tomorrow. So
You sure
thank
do.
you.
You're very welcome. I ordered the staple. I always order the roasted pork and the combo chicken, and it's delicious. And you know what? I forgot to even say my amazing producer, Edward, is here. Hi, Edward.
Hey.
Hey, girl, hey.
Hey, girl, hey.
What did you order, Edward?
I ordered the chicken soup with no description on the menu, which is chicken soup.
Just chicken soup.
I was like, all right, let's just try it. There's some chicken and some soup. Delicious. It was real good.
Okay.
I really, really recommend it. And then I had the grilled chicken with onions on top of it and rice and beans. I took some of the rice, threw it into the soup. It was magic.
It was magic.
Yeah.
Now, with the Cuban Versailles, we're going to have to bring some mouthwash up in here because we stink right now. I mean, these are fresh onions they put on the plate. Right. Okay,
Sure
so speaking of intimate dealings, it just so happens to be that Danny and Edward, they are boyfriend and boyfriend.
Yes.
In a very long relationship. How long have you guys been together?
I want to say 2 years.
2 years?
2 years.
Yeah.
So
2 years.
this is when Edward was talking about his trip to across the country a couple episodes. Danny is the person that was with him.
Correct.
And you had a great time as well on your vacation?
I had a great time. It was nice to go to a new state, Colorado. I've never been to it, never driven through it. And then to see a couple years of Edward's childhood. I saw his middle school, I saw his home, and I also saw one of his obsessions. He's obsessed with mountains. And so he took me to several mountains, but one in particular, Mount Blanca. We took photos of it, and we also took photos with our new puppy.
That's right, Bumblebee.
Bumblebee.
And how is Mr. Bumblebee doing?
Bumblebee is a active, feisty dog, but he is becoming one of the favorite dogs of our block. Like, all the dogs will come out to play with Bumblebee when we're walking him. Like, literally. This one neighbor, always finds us, comes out, and her dog will follow him, or if we're across the street, he'll follow him down the street until he sees him and waits for Bumblebee to cross.
Cute.
Everyone knows Bumblebee.
Cute.
And it's just the beginning. We're gonna take over.
It's true. We have this one particular neighbor. We think she has a security camera or something like that, ready to,
To pounce?
to pounce.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
We gotta
No,
be
she's
careful.
a sweetheart, and her dog's really sweet.
Aw.
But Bumblebee, so I have next week off, and one of my goals is to train him or find a trainer
Good.
to help, because he's a puppy, so he's biting things, he's overexcited. He needs some
training.
boundaries.
I think that's a good idea. We've always trained our dogs too.
Right.
We've always had German Shepherds, and we've had our dogs trained as well. So you want to do that?
Yeah, because it makes the experience of having a dog, having a baby, more
He's
enjoyable.
a baby.
Yeah.
He's a baby. Well, congratulations
Thank you.
to the expanding family. So let's get into it, Mr. Danny. You are a high school teacher.
Right.
You are a private high school teacher. And can I say you are a Catholic private high school teacher? That's why I said it. Okay. According to your bio, you teach for America. You had a 2-year commitment, and for schools in need, public schools you taught for public schools for 2 years, and then of course you switched to private school. But in total, you've been teaching for 13 years.
Yes, I can't believe it.
You've been through the gigs.
Yeah, right out of college, I always knew that I wanted to be a teacher early on, like maybe middle school, high school. I remember playing with dolls, plush toys when I was a kid. I know we all play different stuff, but I remember vividly always playing school. I just liked it.
That's
I was
cool.
drawn to it. I think because I had great teachers. I had nuns who taught me when I was in preschool and kindergarten, and my middle school was really great. So anyway, I knew that I wanted to be a teacher, and so in college, I found out about this program, Teach for America, and it's still in existence. And I applied, and back then it was selective, but now it's super selective. It's like harder.
It's very strict.
It's very strict, and they really have pushed to have more diversity. Because what was happening early on was a disconnect between the teachers and the students. So lately, there's been a big push to have people of color in the classrooms. I did that.
Good.
It was a 2-year commitment. It was a federal program, so I got some money for it, which I put towards my graduate school. I got a Master's of Ed from Loyola Marymount.
Good.
And at the end of my 2-year commitment, I applied to this private school, and I got hired, and I've been there for now almost 11 years.
Wonderful.
I love it.
You teach English.
I teach English.
And you also are a choreographer in the theater department.
Correct. Right.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, so I'm literally working with teens all day, morning, and then in the afternoon, evening.
Good.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And you love it still.
I love it.
You absolutely love it. My goal of this podcast is it's definitely want to be fun. I want to be light. I want to be Queen ShanShan, but I am not a 2-dimensional person. I'm a three-dimensional person. I have thoughts and opinions, and this week kind of disturbed me because of what's going on with this Covington High School drama, and that happened in Washington D.C. I come from very strict Christian parents. And I was appalled. I was upset what I saw. I've seen and read everything what's been going on the last 72 hours. And I've seen the MAGA hat side. I've read the MAGA hat side people's side because you want to have a diverse opinion. And I read what the people like me think and everything. And you are a high school teacher. You are a Catholic high school teacher, Danny. These students were from Covington High School in Kentucky, obviously very conservative. Let's be honest, they're probably all Trump supporters, and they're obviously are because they're wearing MAGA hats. Make America Great hats. But they were taunting a Native American elder, and in the video it showed this one young man standing firm, and this Native American leader, his name was Nathan Phillips, was playing a drum, and they were somehow intertwined, and they all came together, and there was like 100 of these students screaming, yelling up and down, jumping up and down. And the video shows this child being defiant. That's the word I'm looking for. Defiant. Disrespectful. Now, if I ever did that to an elderly person, I don't care what your race is. I don't care what your nationality is, your ethnicity is. You are an older person that deserves respect, period. If I ever did that to an adult when I was 16, 15, 14, my mother would literally snatch my scalp raw. I wouldn't be here anymore. I would be literally dead right now. She would snatch my scalp raw and spank me in front of that person that I disrespected to show a lesson. I was appalled. What are your thoughts? You're a teacher. You're a Catholic high school teacher. What are your thoughts when you saw this, when you read all this? What are your opinions in this whole controversy right now?
I'm the type of person who is going to wait to hear things or read things before I make a judgment.
Okay. Before you react.
Before I react, yeah. And that was sort of what the media also learned, because there was a lot of, oops, we didn't share the whole story kind of thing.
Right.
I see these kids, and I see kids, and I even see my own kids. Not to say that they're bad, not at all. But after reading stuff and watching all those YouTube videos or Twitter videos and listening to some of the scheduled interviews,
right,
with Savannah Guthrie, I find some of the stuff that happened problematic. So for the record, the extreme black Israelites, like they were shouting out obscenities, that's not okay.
Of course not.
Horrible.
Horrible.
And no person should ever hear that or be victim to that. But I found it problematic that they were wearing MAGA hats, and they have every right to, but those are trigger visuals for people, especially
Correct.
people of color, because it represents the president, a man who is bigoted and has been on the record to say that Mexicans, for the most part, are rapists and drug lords, and he's been called out by many people. So that, I think, was alarming for people.
Yes.
To see these predominantly white students wearing these hats and what essentially was a confrontation. It wasn't violent, but it was literally a young kid standing his ground. So that was problematic because that visual, it was weird for me. The second thing was, and he's defended himself, but the whole smirk thing, I have to teach my students about body language. And it's one of the things we teach them. The way you sit, the way you roll your eyes, if you do, can say 1,000 things. And so I found it problematic that he was standing there and smirking. And now he's sort of claiming that I was the victim. I said a silent prayer that things wouldn't get too crazy. But
he
then
also said he wouldn't apologize either.
Right. But then what I found even more problematic was the people behind him were all on their phones videotaping this. And they were all jumping up and down like it was a rave to what was a very sacred protests that the Native Americans have every right to do. Not because it's the freedom of speech, but because they are a group of people that have been marginalized
Yes.
and literally robbed of so many things.
For the last 400 years.
Yes, and still.
No, more than that, 500 years.
Right. So and then the whole Catholic thing, you know, I'm Catholic and I do work at a Catholic school, but the MAGA hat is a symbol, some would argue, that contradicts a faith-based, compassionate philosophy. It's about being empathetic. It's about being compassionate.
Yes.
And I didn't see that. And yes, they're kids. But I read this really great article on Slate today. It was by Mike Pesca. And he argues, and he's like, you know what? We should stay away from calling them evil or villain. What we should really call them is insensitive and buffoons. And the real attention should be on the adults. Like, where were they? I mean, we know they were there. But why did the adults allow this to even happen? Or why did they say, you know, yeah, chant your crazy school chants and continue? Why were there no adults that stepped in and say, hey, let's not chant, let's engage.
Let's engage.
And let's listen.
Let's ask questions.
Let's ask questions.
Now, you have been in field trips. You take your kids to field trips.
Yes.
I've gone to field trips. You've gone to field trips when I was in high school and junior high. Don't you let a teacher see a child act that way as well, especially with the schools that I've been to. I mean, I went to, you know, they're mostly all white schools too, because I was born in a mostly white neighborhood, suburban neighborhood. With that being said, you do not act on field trips either.
No.
Because you're going to get suspended, you'll get detained, you'll have detention, whatever. You're going to be your parents are the ones who are going to be told that you were misbehaving.
Right.
So where were the teachers? Where were the chaperones?
Right.
To say, hey, kids, let's move away from the black Israelites or who were taunting in the first place. Get them to a safer zone. Get them on the bus. Get them to a different situation because they were in Washington, D.C. at the Capitol. Get them to another monument or something instead of having these other horrible people taunting them and causing more of a ruckus.
And, you know, and I agree with this author of the Slate article because, we shouldn't excuse what they did, but they're also just kids, and they are being conditioned by their culture, their family, their school culture, and by the adults. So I would have stepped in and said, guys, like, why are we chanting? Let's listen or observe. It's about observing and listening. And then if you want to engage, like conversation. But it felt like a rave. It felt like a pep rally. Like we had the Native Americans who were protesting legitimately. And they can protest.
And there's 5 of them.
Right.
Versus 100 kids.
And they were and I know they were responding or had responded to the extremists.
Yeah.
But I think there was a learning moment, and it didn't happen.
It didn't happen.
And what also bothers me is that they weren't listening. Instead, they took out their phones and wanted to record what they thought was going to be, and it did, a viral moment.
So before we started recording, you made a really good point about how we don't sit and listen and talk. We immediately rip out our phones and want to record. And I myself have been a person of that. Like when I see something really funny or exciting, I rip out my phone and I want to record.
Right.
And of course, we want it for the likes or the follows or whatever you want to call it, the syncs, the listens to, blah, 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 blah.
And I'm guilty of that too at concerts.
Right.
Like, everyone's recording.
Everyone is.
And on some level, it's amazing that we get to like have these moments forever. But at the same time, literally takes us away from that moment.
From being present.
From being present.
Yeah.
And so I think that was a moment, if anything, I deep down I found it disrespectful and just problematic. But what really bothered me was the fact that they weren't listening or engaging. And most of the kids in the background were jumping up and down like it was a rave at Coachella. Or taking video, and based on their expressions, they were like, "Oh wow, look at this kid Nick. He's standing up to the Native American. Oh, it's so cool. Look, it's like that's not engaging in protest dialogue because you have to hear what people are saying.
That's true.
And then respond appropriately.
Appropriately.
And that's where the adults should have been like, "Hey guys, knock it off. Like let's show them respect by listening." And it didn't happen.
It didn't happen.
Yeah.
So, the White House is obviously sided with the kids.
Right.
And so that also sets a different precedent as well.
Right.
And you're like, wait a minute. I don't know what other president or what other administration would back this type of behavior.
Right. No.
That's problematic in itself. So
like freedom of speech, I believe in, but you could also be a little inappropriate or disrespectful. Like, disrespect doesn't mean you can't voice your opinion. They were just disrespectful towards an elder, towards this Native American group.
And the things about freedom of speech, which we're on a podcast. Thank goodness we have the ability to speak our minds and our opinion. But the people forget with the freedom of speech comes consequences.
Right.
And you forget that the consequences can be negative.
Right.
Okay. So I can say F this, F that. But if someone's to sock me in the face because I said those things, then because of my freedom of speech, I can say what I want to say about your mother. But if I'm going to get socked about it, then I deserve that, right? So you gotta watch what you say. And we are a country now these days where everyone's so me and Ed were talking about, we're so oversensitive. We can be very oversensitive in this world. But this particular situation called for resistance, called for respect for your elders. It didn't need to escalate to where it was.
Right.
There could have been a lot of restraint,
right,
and it wasn't there.
And
home training definitely wasn't present.
Right, that's what it speaks to. But I think we're living in an age we're so obsessed with capturing the moment.
I know.
Technology based that we're becoming less empathetic.
I know.
And that was a moment where these Catholic students could have shown the world that they were compassionate, mm-hmm, and that they were ready and willing to listen and give this group a voice.
Yes.
And instead, they made it into a little mini concert and recorded it for the whole world.
Can I play devil's advocate?
Uh-oh, here we go.
Step in and
here we go.
Just do that for a
Here
second?
we go. Here she comes, y'all. Here she comes.
Yeah.
What? I mean, I always try to think, like, what's the other side thinking? You know? Mm-hmm. If you're in somebody else's shoes and you're, somebody raised with a different set of morals or standards or political beliefs, what are they thinking and what filter are they looking at that through? Those kids didn't do anything wrong. They were just watching. But don't you think, okay, so they were witnessing what this young man was doing, Nick, his name? That kid was uncomfortable, and he had a smirk on his face because he was really uncomfortable and he didn't know what to do. And half the country is saying exactly what you're saying, Edward. Half the country is saying what you're saying. So I come back at you and I said, where is the respect of letting this older man walk up the stairs? Because he was blocking that kid was blocking that Native American's way to go up the stairs. He was banging his drums, doing his chant, whatever. And this kid, with the 100 other kids that were around him, were blocking them. They couldn't move. So what are you going to do? You're not going to, knock the kid over. Then you're going to be the devil. Right. You're not going to push him. So he had 5 people around him standing, drumming on his drum, trying to do what he wants to do. And you got this kid with his arms crossed or whatever, with this smirk. In other countries, that kid would be ripped off the stage, ripped off the stairs, and beaten to a pulp if you ever did that to an older gentleman, to an older woman of any color. Because it is about still respect. You're going to let him go and do your thing and be on your way. And the kids could have ran away and, like you said, it became a concert, it became Coachella.
Yeah.
It didn't need to escalate at that point. So I don't think it was definitely not the Native American's fault that he wanted to bang his drums and everything. So I don't know.
So what would the message be as a teacher?
They didn't think. It was an impulsive reaction. But at the end of the day, whether it's a Catholic teaching thing or just being a good human thing, I think really it's being about a good civil servant. It's about listening and engaging in an appropriate way. And at the end of the day, these kids, because of the adults, did not exhibit those traits.
Right.
They got excited. Maybe they were rattled by the extremists. But they were excited, especially when they started chanting, because the story is they asked the adults, can we do our school chants to like out voice them? And they did. Like they overpowered a very small group of these extremists, but they got too excited and they realized, you know what? Maybe it's someone else's turn to say something too. It almost felt like they were overpowering, and that's what happened. There was a small group of Native Americans and like 60 crazy jumping up and down teenagers, and they had a learning moment and they failed, because if they want to be true civil servants or like true Catholic students, it's about being compassionate, it's about listening. And they were all impulsively doing something in the moment. They were excited and they forgot like what that place symbolizes.
Yeah, they were in the state's capital.
It was disrespectful to that place. That in of itself, people would argue, is disrespectful.
Right.
Yeah, the second that kid was given the green light to do a rally cry or whatever, he ran down to the front, tore his shirt off, and beat his chest like some kind of primate. Like,
right.
What is that? What was that?
Oh, I think that was actually one of the teachers that did that.
No, that was a kid.
It looked like an older kid.
No, it was a student.
That was a student, is it? It looked, he had gray hair. It looked like he had gray hair.
He was just a little chunky kid.
But to his defense, though,
I mean, this guy Nick stole that guy's thunder, because that guy was the main event.
right?
Oh, isn't it cold in Washington D.C.?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying.
So he went on the stairs, ripped his shirt off, and started jumping around.
Yeah.
And leading them chanting.
Oh, come on now.
But to his defense, that's allowed. I mean, that's his freedom of speech. It's just disrespectful.
Especially given
Again,
where it is.
Yeah.
Lincoln Memorial.
Right.
Martin Luther King Day, and they were there for anti-abortion type of movement or march or whatever they were doing. They were pro-life.
But if the conservative people are going to applaud him, then we have a disagreement in values.
That's so true.
So that's where we can be like, okay, we disagree, because this is a sacred, symbolic place.
Right.
Many people have gone through here.
Millions and millions and millions.
And for that to happen, yeah, you have your right to do that. You're right. Okay. I applaud you for using your right. But it's disrespectful. And you have missed the point if you think that is better than what should be happening.
Oh my God, we can talk about this subject forever.
Wouldn't that side say, well, you're disrespectful towards the president if you're talking about him?
Good God. Then they were back in 1920s where it was they actually prohibited people to talk about the presidents and people in politics. You went to jail if you scoffed at anyone in politics. Are we going back there literally to 100 years from now? 100 years ago? I mean, the man definitely deserves rebuking, let's be honest. But we could go on again with this subject, because it does hit home to all three of us in this room. Mm-hmm. So can't you imagine how the whole country is feeling right now?
Right. It speaks to what's happening in this nation.
It speaks to what's happening in this nation, with the government shutdown, with people not being able to pay their bills. Oh my God! Again, I can go on and on and on, because I do benefits for people in the government. And so if they're not getting paid, they're not getting any deductions. If they're not getting any deductions, they can't pay for their insurance. They can't pay for their mortgage. They can't put food on their table. We're talking about a whole completely different subject. But the point is that just because it affects 800,000 federal workers, it really is affecting the whole nation.
Right.
Because this is going to be a cyclical event.
But Laura Trump said it was just a little bit of pain.
There was some other billionaire that's on the committee with Trump as well, and he quoted today saying, why can't people just borrow money from their friends and family?
I almost threw up on myself.
I could not believe when I read that. Some billionaire, I don't know what his name is, I saw on the news today. Mm-hmm. He said, why can't they just take loans from their family and friends?
That's ridiculous.
Really, dude?
And so that speaks to the insensitive.
Right.
And lack of empathy.
And not knowing what really people are going through.
Right. And
or understanding, I should say.
I'm saying that it's sort of technology's fault that we've become less empathetic, but it's literally a crisis. I think it is becoming a world crisis where we're becoming less empathetic, less compassionate, which therefore creates more tension. Mm-hmm. Unnecessary. Wars happen because we don't listen. Yes, there's greed and there's bloodthirst, but this country, we can have different opinions, but to be insensitive, that makes no sense. It's about listening, and we're not listening.
We're not listening. Well, we're going to have to close this subject because again, we can go on and on and on, but I really wanted to get your opinion. It's that your visit could not be perfectly timed and apropos to what's going on in the last 72 hours as a teacher, as a Catholic school teacher, high school teacher. I wanted to get your opinion. So thank you so much for sharing.
And thank you for having me. But I just want to make a last point that there are amazing students out there, students that do go to D.C. and do protest.
Of course.
And so I want to give them a shout out. Keep doing what you got to do. Be a good civil servant. But unfortunately, this is what happened, and it got caught virally, and so that's why we're talking about it. But kudos to those kids who are fighting the good fight.
And their teachers and their chaperones.
Yes.
And their parents.
And their parents.
It does start home. It starts at home.
Yes.
Beauty, beauty, beauty. We're going to talk about beauty now, honey. And speaking of being snatched for days, my wig was snatched yesterday. Yesterday it was on my little social medias, and here do I see prancing on the front runway at New York Fashion Week is Miss Naomi Campbell. Now, what if I'm talking about is her amazing epic comeback. Naomi Campbell was the last model on the stunning Valentino Haute Couture New York Fashion Week show yesterday. And the audience literally clutched their pearls. And you could hear them like, oh my God, it's Naomi Campbell, honey. She came out. Danny, did you see this?
I did, yeah.
Oh, come on, Naomi. Work.
Right.
And she comes out with this stunning Pierpaolo Pacioli. It's spelled Piccioli. Campbell gave the crowd a thrill by returning to the Italian label's runway for the first time in 14 years. 14 years. She hasn't been seen on the runway stage since the spring 2000 couture collection of Valentino. I mean, obviously they were good friends.
Yes, and I hear she's very selective about...
Of course she is.
Right.
She's not... I'm going to be honest. Miss Naomi is not very nice.
She's a diva.
She's a diva. She's beyond diva. She's kind of evil. When remember she went to... I don't know if she served time or she was charged, but she threw a cell phone at one of her assistants. She cursed at somebody. She slammed the door on somebody. Whatever. She had some violent raids.
She's late to a lot of project.
Yes, she is. She's correct. Miss Naomi, yeah, I don't know if I want to ever meet her on the corner, but the way that she still struts, she still has it.
And she looks amazing.
Amazing.
And what a showstopper.
I know.
I mean, her name and her just iconic presence is already enough.
Of course.
But this garment is gorgeous.
It's gorgeous.
And to add to that, her naked body. I mean, it was showstopper.
Again, the breasts were saying hello Shannon. Like they were saying hello Shannon all over the place. I mean, if this is the epitome of the phrase "black don't crack," hello black don't crack.
She's like a goddess. She's like a lioness on the hunt. She's like, don't mess with me.
I just want to point out too that she's 29 days younger than me.
Oh,
but she looks a lot younger than me.
Of course, black don't crack, honey. Work, Naomi. I'm still afraid of you. I probably would ever be afraid if I ever meet you in person.
And just to be a fly on that wall,
can you imagine? Because the audience literally went because they weren't expecting a show. What was that?
What?
Do you hear it?
No.
Girl, it's that time.
Ooh.
It's commercial time. And you know what? I have to express my experience. Mm-hmm. I was in Palm Springs 2 weeks ago with my friends, very good friends, Stephen and Jeff, and we had an impromptu dinner. We went to Mastro's Steakhouse. And girl, we ordered some lobster mashed potatoes, mac and cheese, Rombauer wine, and we lived it up. And not only was the food delicious, the service was on point.
When are we going?
We're gonna go tomorrow.
Yay.
Let's go. Thank you, Mastros, for your amazing service and food. The address is 73405 El Paseo, Suite 120 in Palm Desert, California. Let them know Queen ShanShan sent ya. Hunty! Madonna, Madonna, Madonna. Fussy, 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 fussy.
Whoa, it's that time already?
It's that time, honey.
Girl.
We're going to talk about our queen mother.
Yeah, lots going on with her this week, right?
Madonna has a brunette pixie.
She sure does. It's reminiscent of her career.
Come on. Like a virgin, not like a virgin, like a prayer.
Like a prayer.
Like a prayer.
1989, like a prayer. She went El Natural, and that's the color she has dyed her hair back to. Can you dye your hair natural?
Of course you can. Doing. But also, doesn't it remind you of also Isla Bonita too?
Very much Isla Bonita.
Very, especially with the curls.
Yes, with the curls.
So I texted you and I emailed you and I again almost fainted and I'm like, look at her girl, look at her queen mother.
Yes.
And
beautiful. Like, I think she looks stunning, actually.
She does.
Her blue eyes and that dark hair.
Yes.
I was cracking up at like some of the internet like banter that was going on.
What were they saying?
Some of the ads were like, Madonna's like, we don't recognize her anymore. We barely recognize her. Actually, the quote was exactly, Madonna now has a brunette pixie, and whoa, we barely recognize her. That's according to Tori Crowther at popsugar.com in the UK. Gorgeous girl. But I'm sure she's no older than like 25 years old, so she was probably not even born at the time Like a Prayer had come out.
Of course not, at 25 years old.
The incarnation of Madonna with that kind of hair. But she did do her hair again, that color, in 1998 when she went to the geisha look, remember?
That's right.
For Nothing Really Matters video.
Nothing Really Matters, right.
Yeah, and she was the geisha.
Yes.
But, yes.
Iconic look.
Iconic look. I'm pro Madonna with her like dark hair, so her ass can get lost. I have another theory on that ass that she's like wearing.
What's the theory?
I mean, I think she's working out really, really hard, and she's like working on her body, and she's kind of like wearing a fat suit.
You think so? So she can display it when she's on stage? Yeah. And she does the video for her first song coming out, hopefully next month?
For sure. So, yeah, that's about all for the Madonna
Excuse me. Can I say some juice on Janet?
Excuse me.
I love me some Madonna, but I love me some Janet.
Oh, we love some JJ too. What do we have on JJ?
Well, I just want to remind the peoples that she is one of the inductees to the 2019 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
That's right.
Along with Stevie Nicks, Radiohead, The Cure, and others.
That's
so congrats to her.
Congratulations, JJ. Miss Damita Joe.
Miss Janet, if you're nasty.
That's right.
And I looked up her tour, and she is in Tokyo next month, February.
Okay.
It's part of this, still her tour. But there's rumbling that she's working also on an album. Yeah, because it's been 3 or 4 years.
Clutch the pearls.
And, but I did read an article. She says that she has found peace with her son. Okay. So we should expect to see something different and new from her. I mean, we always do. But,
we always do.
Yeah. So kudos to her.
Kudos, Miss JJ. Edward, we've talked about so much today and very passionate about what we talked about today. But let's talk about today in history. What went on?
What is today?
What is today? Today is Thursday, January 24th.
Wow, already. So on January 24th, 1965, Winston Churchill dies from a cerebral thrombosis at the age of 90.
Thrombosis means probably it was a vein or an artery in his brain that might have exploded, almost like an aneurysm, you think?
Probably an aneurysm.
Oh, okay.
Such a fancy wording for an aneurysm.
It is a fancy thrombosis. Okay.
Yeah, cerebral thrombosis.
Okay, got it.
But he was a big deal.
Yeah, he was.
A little bit.
He was part of history that we had to grow up with, and he was very integral in World War II.
Totally was.
Yeah.
In 1980, a rebuff to the Soviets, the U.S. announces intentions to sell arms to China.
Interesting.
Had we not done that before?
Why is our history always repeating itself?
I know. It seems like everything's just happening over and over and over again.
We're on repeat. We're on rinse, repeat.
It's always
wash, rinse, repeat.
Soviets or China? The Soviets or China?
It's the Soviet. China. That's how you pronounce it.
Okay, so in 1982, a draft of U.S. Air Force history reports that the U.S. secretly sprayed herbicides on Laos during the Vietnam War.
Which is, horrific that the actual government sprayed their own soldiers. This chemical, which impaired a lot of the Vietnam vets with permanent brain damage, permanent physical breathing and respiratory issues that came over later in the years to find out why were these soldiers dying and sick, And interesting that happened. Again, part of history repeating itself, because we don't know what's really going on in Afghanistan and Iraq with all these years. Why are these soldiers today, these young soldiers who are vets now, having worse PTSD issues, worse brain issues, worse health issues than they've had in Vietnam? Isn't that interesting?
That's true. Yeah.
What's going on over there that we don't know? We'll never. Who knows? Maybe we'll never know.
I'm blaming technology.
You're gonna blame technology?
I don't know why.
Girl, this episode is something. It's jam packed. This ain't no typical
herbicides
podcast.
Not only kills weeds, it kills people too.
It kills weeds. That's right. We talked about the Roundup chemical in our other podcast about our fruits and vegetables.
Right.
That's right.
You know what? You and we're done. We'll just pack up the bags.
And
That's it.
Cesar Chavez, a big California protester and civil
That's
rights,
right.
He went to protest and advocate for the farm workers because they were being sprayed. They were eating from not herbicides but pesticides. So it's like these chemicals that our own government, our own companies were injecting.
I didn't know that.
And people were getting cancer.
That's why Cesar Chavez is like he was the spokesman of the people back in the day, and they didn't have a voice.
He was
That's
like a
crazy.
Vita Peron.
It's correct. Yes, absolutely. So that was history of today. Broad alert, my social media. You want to contact me, Queen ShanShan? You can look us up at our brand new website, www.abroadproductions.com. Follow me on Instagram at Queen ShanShan. My Facebook fan page is also Abroad Productions, and my Twitter is _broad, spelled BROAD_prod, PROD. And for media inquiries and sponsorship opportunities, you can email me at abroadproductions@gmail.com. Broads, boys and girls, tune in next week. I'm going to have my friend Rick Klinger, and we're going to discuss Grammy noms, the new musical artists to look forward to in 2019. Rick has a lot to say. He loves music, and he's got a lot of musical artists I've never even heard of. Danny, it's time.
Aww.
It's time to say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Aww. You know what? I want to say thank you so much. I'm very grateful for you being here.
Thank you.
Did you have fun?
I had a lot of fun. Thank you for the food. Thank you for the laughs and the great discussion.
Of course.
Thank
anytime.
you for having me.
And just for you broads to know, Danny has actually inspired me to call my podcast A Broad Podcast, because I am abroad. I want to talk about abroad topics and opinions. And he actually said, why don't you just call it Abroad? I'm like, okay, perfect.
Yeah, it's a punny.
It's a punny. Thank you, Danny. So, broads, thank you for listening. I appreciate you. And tune in next week and listen to Abroad.